Welcome back to another mini Make Movement Matter episode with me, Wendy Welpton. Today I want to ask you something. Do you think that your environment shapes the way you move, and more than you realise? I'm not talking about big dramatic ways where you sort of immediately say, oh, yeah, of course it is. But instead I'm focusing on the small everyday moments where you're just getting on with your day. Because when you really start to notice them, they are everywhere. Let me help you see what I mean. Think about this morning. You got up, maybe you sat on the edge of your bed, stood up, headed to the kitchen, reached for the kettle, pressed the button to make it boil, and stood in roughly the same spot facing it. You might have picked up your phone and scrolled, and then sat down when you'd made your cup of tea in the usual chair, in your usual position, and making the same shapes with your body. None of that feels like a decision, does it? It just feels normal. And maybe later that day you were unloading the dishwasher, you opened the door, you faced it square on, and you would reach and place in exactly the same pattern. Your feet stay where they are and your body moves in a small range of movements. Again, this is not wrong. It's just one way of doing it and the way we've always done it. But is that environment shaping you? Because if our environment is shaping us and doesn't particularly support us, the most important thing we can do is start to really think about that. Is it directing our movements? Is it suggesting options or removing others? Is it nudging us towards better choices all the time? Or is the environment making us choose repeated patterns that are also starting to define the way we move? And why does this even matter? Your body responds to what you do regularly, not what you do occasionally as much. So if most of your day is spent in the same positions, moving in the same ways, on the same levels, your body is going to continually adapt to that. It needs to get good at the things that you're asking it to do. And as a result, you may start to get less confident or feel less capable in other movements that you don't do and you don't try regularly. It makes sense. The issue is that we don't often notice those things that we're becoming less confident in or less capable of, because it doesn't happen overnight in one big shock. It's a gradual process, and suddenly one day we hesitate before getting down to the ground because we just haven't been there. Or we suddenly notice that we're using our hands a lot more to support ourselves, and things that used to feel simple aren't quite as simple anymore. Now, it's easy in those moments to think, I can't do that anymore. Or worse, I'm just getting older and that's part of it. Or just that's how it is now. But what if it's not how it is now? What if it doesn't need to be? What if it's certainly not linked necessarily to age? What about instead if it's about your exposure? What if your body has simply stopped being asked to do those things because your environment no longer requires it? So let's zoom out for a moment, because there was a time when this worked very differently. And it's a really good way of thinking about how our environment is so different and therefore creates different movement for us. If we zoom out for a moment, it's really useful to make a comparison, because there was a time when this all worked very differently. It was when our environment didn't make things easier, it made things necessary. If we needed food, we had to go and get it. If something was in our way, we had to move it or go around it or over it or under it. We would walk for miles to get things and bring them back. We would carry because we didn't have vehicles to put things in. We would squat low to be able to quickly move away when we're doing a task down low, and because it was comfortable. And we would always be reaching, crawling around, and not because we were planning to, but because we were in an environment that required it. We didn't have things all around us that were built to reduce our movement. And the key thing is not that we should envy not having the things that we have in modern life, but we should notice and recognize that regular, varied movement kept our bodies adaptable, strong, in a whole variety of ways and comfortable in different positions, not relying on furniture to make us comfortable. We were therefore capable across a wide range of situations. Now compare that to today, where we've created spaces where everything happens pretty much on one level. Kitchen surfaces, tables, desk chairs. We've brought everything up to be easier for us to access what we want to do. Everything is becoming designed for efficiency, to be more comfortable, and therefore it becomes more predictable. Again, it's really important to realize these are not bad things, but it does mean that we need to question whether we are doing less and less or creating less and less variety because our body is being asked to do less. So it's not really our fault, but if we start to recognize that our environment is causing these issues, then we start to notice it more and be able to make choices. The funny thing is that we end up trying to add movement back in. We have created exercise as a construct. We go for a walk. We do an exercise class. We carve out time for exercise, and that's incredibly valuable. And of course, I do it as much as anyone else does. Exercise is incredibly key for health. But the problem is, what about the rest of the day? Why do we not see that movement throughout the day, not in a taxing, sweaty, tough way, but in a way that is going to make us feel better, move differently, express ourselves differently, is going to be as beneficial as exercise? So the question I really want you to think about is about your environment. What is it asking of you for the rest of your day? This is where the real accumulation happens of beneficial movements, not just in one chunky exercise session, but in the hundreds of small moments in between, many of which we are missing. Have a think about what your home invites you to do, or your workspace. What does your routine make easy, and what does it start to make less likely to happen? And maybe importantly, what have you stopped noticing about that lack of movement around you? This is where it gets really interesting. It's not about you consciously choosing to move less. That may be the case, but more likely it's that your environment has gradually removed that need. And we certainly saw that in COVID when people were working from home. They lost their commute and suddenly they had to move much smaller distances. And where before they may have begrudged the time that they were commuting, walking, cycling, and so on, they suddenly realized how much better they felt for doing it. Let me give you an example. If nothing in your day requires you to get down to the ground, you don't. And not because you can't, but because there's no reason to. So days turn into weeks, weeks into months. And that range, the confidence to do it, the ease, does start to fade. If you really have to carry anything with a bit of weight, your body stops expecting it. So when you do, you go to pull a suitcase for a holiday or a heavy bag or something awkward, it feels a lot harder than it used to. Again, it's not necessarily because you've lost it. It's because you've stopped practicing it. So it doesn't mean that it can't come back. This is why paying attention to your environment matters, because it's one of the biggest levers you have, not for doing more exercise, but for building more movement into the life that you're already living. So here's an idea to think about. As you move through your day, maybe even later today after you've listened to this, just start noticing your environment, not in a judgmental way and not trying to change everything, but just noticing. Just have a think about, where have things been made easier? Where has the effort been removed? And where does it limit your options for variety? And once you've started noticing these, then thinking more positively, where might be the moments where you could move differently, but you maybe not at the moment. Maybe it's the moment that you go to sit down and get back up. Maybe it's putting something away in a different way. Maybe it is how you get from A to B just within your house. Every time we add in more variety and different options to the way that we move around our environment, it's like a ripple effect. We start to see more and more opportunities. And because we feel better doing them, we tend to want to do them more. It's never about doing things perfectly. There is no such thing. And it's not about making life hard for the sake of it. It's about recognizing that your environment is shaping your movement, every single day. So the question becomes, are you going to let that happen by default? Or are you going to make intentional choices to start seeing the moments around you, choosing differently when it makes sense? After all, we might as well make use of all the moments in our day that are there already. We're not adding big chunks of time in. We are literally choosing differently in all the moments that we have, and maybe adding in a few more if we feel they're needed. And if you're listening to this thinking, I can see it, but I don't quite know what to do with that, because obviously it would be a very long podcast with all the answers and suggestions, that is exactly the gap that I work within. Reclaim Everyday Ease is my signature program where we look at your real life, your home. I get you to see your routines and your habits differently. We start to shift how you see them so that movement becomes something that naturally weaves its way back in. And I give you ideas and choices of movements. And we talk about the different times that those can be added in to make sure it's seamless, because if it fits in your real life, you're far more likely to keep doing it than if I give you some long list of exercises you need to add in every day. We all know the reality with that is they will not happen. So if we can get you thinking creatively about movement in your own life, your own environment, and seeing the world differently, big things can happen. And it's through small, consistent choices. Sue from my September course coined the phrase, little, varied and often. And that was absolutely key, because when we try to put something big in, a big change, it just doesn't work. It feels like too much effort. It feels overwhelming. Whereas when we slowly build with small, consistent choices that become habits, then we build strength, we build mobility, we build confidence, capability, stability. Everything comes together because of the way we're choosing to move in daily life. The next cohort of Reclaim Everyday Ease starts next Monday, the 27th of April, and I would absolutely love to see you there. The course encompasses 8 weeks, each with materials sent out on the Monday that you will up to a maximum of an hour to watch, but usually less, listen to and watch. And then you make choices from there for the week about what you're going to work on and how it's going to fit into your day. On a Wednesday, there's then a live call, a live workshop at 2:30 p.m. London time. And that's where we work through the materials of the week, but we also discuss your own personal situations. And then during the rest of the week, there is the community group where we can come up with ideas, stay accountable to one another, and basically spur each other on to ensure that we are continually building. If this sounds like it's for you, but you're not quite sure, please do get in touch with me. Wendy@reclaimmovement.co.uk, and I'd be happy to jump on a call if you want to discuss if it's right for you. So for now, just start with the question, is your environment shaping the way you move? And what might change if you started to see it differently? Now, one of the missing movements in daily life is twisting, particularly through the torso. We often face the thing that we're doing. So today's movement is torso twists. Now, I am going to step back a little bit so that you can see me. So, stepping back, I hope you can hear me well. I've taken my feet wider than hip width, with my feet slightly pointing out, gently bending the knees so that they're soft rather than locked. And now, I'm imagining you're in a restricted space, like on a chair, perhaps if you're listening to this, but we can do both options. So if you are, I want you to take your fingers onto your shoulders and lift your elbows up so that your arms are horizontal. We're then going to simply twist our torso. We could move our head, but this is not about the head and neck. This is about the torso. So pushing down through both feet with our weight beautifully in our heels. We're going to twist to one side as far as we can go. I'm going to put my head back so that you can hear me, and then come back to the center. Over to the other side, twisting around and feeling the twist because our legs are wider in the hips, the back of the pelvis, the spine, all the way up towards the shoulders. And each time, see if you can go a little bit further without pushing or straining, just seeing if you're Fascia is releasing any tension that has held you and wringing out any of that tension. And just enjoy the movement. You can go a little bit faster if you want, but I always encourage you to go slowly to start with. So it's a really intentional movement and not using momentum so much. Now you can also do this with your arms out wide in a T, and again, keeping that lovely twist, but don't lead with the arms. So keep the arms in your peripheral vision rather than getting to the end of the range of the torso twist and then the arms lead. So make sure you come back and you're true to keeping them in that peripheral vision. And then drop them down and just notice how the weight of your arms has really worked your shoulders and your arms just by having them up there. Okay, I really hope you have enjoyed this episode. When I started to see the environment around me differently, I didn't think, right, I'm getting rid of all my furniture, I'm going to go and live in a hut somewhere, and I'm going to forage for my food. That wasn't what I decided to do. And I realized that it wasn't what most people would do. So when I started coaching, I thought I need to be creative here to help people to work around the environment that we find ourselves in, because it's not going to change, but it is potentially going to get worse in terms of all the things that are developed, the amazing things for comfort and convenience. But by informing people about the choice they have and giving them the options of the way to use their bodies around their environment, that's when movement habits can stick. I want to leave you with a quote from Darren Hardy. He said, "Smart choices plus consistency equal radical difference." And I couldn't agree more.